I'm going to show you how to shorten the hydraulic lines on a set of Shimano brakes. Typically when you buy a new set of brakes, the lines are too long and you've got to cut them to fit your bicycle. So this video will focus on that, and then I'll make a second video that shows you how to bleed the brakes once you have the lines shortened and reinstalled in your bike. Here's what you're going to need to do this. You're going to need this connector insert, and this olive is what it's called, and this will come with a new set of Shimano brakes. You're going to need a cable cutter, one that will cut housing like this Park CN4. You may need a 5mm Allen wrench to remove the caliper from the bike, which you really have to do on the rear brake. The front you don't necessarily need to remove the caliper. You're going to need a 3mm Allen wrench. You need a hammer. You don't really need a large hammer. This is kind of a medium-sized one, but a small one works fine. A pair of tweezers is helpful. You don't have to have those, and I'll show you why in a minute. An 8mm open-ended wrench. A small nail is helpful. Again, I'll show you why in a minute. And then you need this little tool that typically will come with a pair of brakes. The brakes that I got from Shimano, I got front and rear. This came with the front, but not the rear. So if you don't have this, then sometimes a bench vise will have these slots in here to hold cables, and that's what you're going to need to install the connector insert. And you do need a bench vise to hold this into place. I'll show you what you need to do the bleed in the separate video. The first step is to actually install the brakes onto the bicycle, and I'm not going to show how to do that in this video, but I've put we're going to do the front for this one, so I've put the lever on the handlebars and I've installed the caliper on the bike. So go ahead and mount that on the bike, and that will help us determine how long the lines need to be. The next thing that you need to do is remove the brake pads from the caliper. You're going to have to bleed the brakes when you're done cutting the lines, and you never want to bleed a set of brakes with the brake pads in, because if you ever get hydraulic fluid on the pads, it will ruin them. And by the way, I have the towel back here just to make the background less busy so you can see this. So I'm going to remove the retainer clip, and then just take your 3mm Allen wrench and remove this bolt, and then the brake pads will slide out. Okay, now you don't need this for cutting, but you are going to need it when you bleed. You're also going to need this bleed block, and I'm going to go ahead and insert this inside the brake caliper, and then I'm going to take my bolt to hold the bleed block in place, and just give that a couple turns. Now at the lever end, you've got this rubber cover, and you just want to slide that off, and it'll just pull off, and then you want to slide it down the brake line. Just get it out of the way. Now take your 8mm wrench and undo this bolt. This is going to back the brake line out of the caliper, and that will sometimes be pretty tight. I do have a trash can under here in case some hydraulic fluid leaks out. And by the way, one reason I really like Shimano brakes is because they use mineral oil and not DOT fluid. The mineral oil is not corrosive like regular brake fluid is, and so it's really nice to work with. You don't have to worry about it corroding your paint. Now once this bolt comes out, you're just going to slide it down the line a little bit, get it out of the way. You're not going to take that off the line. Okay, now the line will just pull out. Sometimes it takes a little bit of rocking back and forth, and now I pulled it out. Now this is the olive that was originally in there that I showed you in the beginning, and obviously once you install these, it crushes into the brake line and you cannot use this anymore. And there's the insert. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the line, and we're going to put a new insert inside the brake line. Now at this point, it's time to determine how long of a brake line that you need to have on your bike. Alright, so I've determined that right here is where my cut needs to be. When you do this, hold the line in place where you think your cut needs to be, and spin the handlebars, and this is especially true when doing the rear. And make sure that you can spin the handlebars almost 180 degrees around without the cables restricting the movement of the bars. You don't want them too long, but if you go too short, again, it'll restrict the movement of the bars. So now that I know where my cut needs to be, I'm just going to take my housing cutters and make my cut. Alright, now it's time to put the connector insert inside the housing. But before I do that, I'm going to take the housing and take this nail and make sure that there's a pretty good size hole in there and that the nail can move in and out freely. Now I'm going to take this little block tool, put the cable inside, and put it in the bench vise. And I didn't show it on the video, but I have the bike in a work stand. I just moved it closer to the bench. If that's not practical, you can actually remove the brake from the bicycle. For me, it's a lot easier. It's less steps just to move the bike over in the stand next to the bench vise. So I want to leave just a little bit of housing sticking up. And I tighten the bench vise. Not crazy tight, but you need to hold it in place. Okay, now it's time to just hammer that little insert down inside. And this is where the tweezers come in handy. And I'm going to just put it over the hole, hold it in place, and just tap it down in there. So you don't need to whack it really hard, just get it down inside there. Alright, you can see that the connector insert is all the way flush with the housing. It's really important that there's not any kind of a gap between the connector insert and the housing. It's got to be all the way flush. Now it's time to put the housing back inside the brake lever. And again, the reason I have the towel behind here is just to make the background less busy. I do have the rubber insert still on the cable. Make sure that did not fall off. That's got to be on there, because if it's not, you can't put it on once you put the housing back inside the lever. Take your olive, slide it on, and then we're going to just push on the housing, hold it firmly inside the lever as we twist this bolt back on. Okay, keep pressure on the housing, pushing it inside the brake lever. Get it about hand tight. And now it's time to take your 8mm wrench again and tighten this down. This needs to be between 6 and 8 Newton meters. So now I'm just going to tighten it all the way down until I get it tight enough. And what's happening is that olive that you installed is crushing down and making a seal between the lever and the housing. Okay, that's about 8 Newton meters. And if you're not real familiar with torque specs, as to how they feel, I've been working on bikes for a long time, so I can feel what the torque specs are. But I also have a torque wrench that I'll use sometimes. But if you're not sure, use a torque wrench. Again, 6 to 8 Newton meters on this bolt. Now that we've got this in, just take that rubber housing and push it back on. Now that is it for cutting and reinstalling the brake lines. I'll end this video now, but again, look on my YouTube channel and look for the next step to actually bleed the brakes. Thanks for watching.